Hey guys, today I'm really excited to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics, which is treating R. So if you are an SLP wondering how to treat R, you're in the right place. If we haven't met before, I'm Karen. I am so glad that you are here. So welcome or welcome back to my channel. On this channel, I just talk about speech therapy. This is a channel created by an SLP for other SLPs. So I thought I would start today by explaining the difference between a bunched R and a retroflex R. So if you're a little bit confused on those, I'm going to go over that first. So a bunched R, the tongue is literally bunched and near the palate. It's like bunched up in the palatal area. So it's like this, and the tip of the tongue is actually kind of just retracted or pulled into itself. And the sides of the tongue are lifted and they are touching the upper posterior molars. If you're talking about a retroflex R, that is where the tip of the tongue, it's more of like angled up, kind of just angled up. And sometimes it can be tipped backwards. And so I have in the past thought of it as like a backwards C, but it's not always in that bowl shape. It's sometimes just angled up towards, pointing up towards the alveolar ridge. But you will know if your student is doing a retroflexed R because you would be able to see the tongue actually lifted up. So you'd be able to look in the mouth and see that. And if your student's doing a bunched R, the tongue is pulled up and back. So that's the difference, is the tongue positioning. I know that R can be very overwhelming for a lot of SLPs. It's definitely understandable. So I hope that after you watch this video, after I'm going to kind of just dive in and share exactly how I treat R, I just hope that you're going to walk away and feel much more comfortable in this treatment area. So the first thing I like to do is get some really good data on where my student is now. This is the type of information that I want before I even do therapy. What I like to do is give the entire world of R screening form to my students. So this looks at R in all the different contexts, and it just tells me what specific vocalic R sounds is my student having trouble with, or what sounds are they really, already understanding, already able to say. Because chances are there are going to be a couple positions, maybe it's initial or maybe it's final position of just or just but there's going to be some type of R that your student likely can say. And that's a strength, and we can certainly use that later on. But what I get first is I get a percentage. So I will see how many sounds were they able to say correctly on that screening. There's 21 total words that you elicit on that screening form. So I get some data with that. That gives me a starting percentage on where my student's at in therapy. And then I can use that same form, 6 months, a year down the road, and I can see exactly how much they have grown in this area. So if you have been kind of following along with me on my SLP journey, you may know that I have taken coursework in orofacial myology. Another course that I took was Sandra Holtzman's R course, and that is on Northern Speech Services. So what I'm about to be describing to you is based off of that research-based CEU course that you can take if you are interested in doing so. So I'm going to kind of just discuss that, and then of course just throw in some of the other things that I have found to be extremely helpful and useful when correcting vocalic R in speech therapy. When I am working on R, the first place I start is working on the sound in isolation. And yes, this is actually an objective that I write for my students. They have to master this. This is a foundational skill for my students. And it is okay if it takes them 2 months to get the sound in isolation. That sometimes happens. I think with R and lisps as well, even though that's not the topic of this video. But patience is key, is something I have learned. And R just takes time for our students. It is complex, and it, takes a lot of thought on their part. And so, when I'm starting with this sound, sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating for my students. I just really try and, give honest feedback for them and just remind them that this isn't an easy sound, but they are going to get it. So if you're working on a retroflexed R and you're trying to get from that, you can try the trick that this is like an old trick. It's been around for a while, but you can try shaping it from and just having them tap or slide their tongue back towards their throat, like and just have them kind of slide the tongue tip back. You could also try using like a dental floss pick. There's like kind of picks, and then they could kind of try and pull back with the tongue tip to see if they could get the tongue into the right position to make that retroflex R sound. So those are some ways you can try to teach that R, that in isolation sound. Some of the ways I get the sound in speech therapy, what I have tried a lot in the past is used a tongue depressor. This is, of course, for a bunched R. It's just a tongue depressor. And just had the student, we worked on lifting the tongue up and back. So physically lifting the tongue up and back, and then I'd have them smile while we did that and say, Now, some of you may be watching and you're like, hey, I'm doing teletherapy right now, or, whatnot. But I have found a couple other ways to get this sound. One of the most best ways I found to get this sound is just to describe that spread and lift of the tongue. So I use my arms to show this to my students, and I have found this to be an incredibly important visual for them. So I will just kind of show them, you gotta lift the sides of the tongue. And then I also have a typodont that I show them, and I explain, hey, you gotta lift the sides of your tongue up and back. And I show them on a typodont where they need to be making contact. So like, as I said earlier, the upper posterior molar. So I just show them the teeth and say, the sides of your tongue need to be touching the sides of your upper back teeth. So having a typodont on hand or some sort of visual is really, really useful. But again, just that arm movement and, just showing them how they have to lift the sides of their tongue. And if my student says like, instead of and I just give them those cues. I said, hey, you dropped the sides of your tongue. And I'll use my arms and I'll show them. I said, oh, you said, now I want, And I'm just telling you that just reminding them to spread and lift the tongue and using your arms is just super, super beneficial and helpful. So try that out with your students if they are having a little bit of trouble getting the sound. One more way that you might use to get the sound, and I'm going to admit to you that I don't use this way quite as often. I find my go-to is teaching the sound with, the spread and lift and showing the arm movements and showing the lingual placement and all of that. But there's a couple kids here and there that doesn't always cut it for them. And so then I might take a look at, what other R can they say? So for example, maybe your student can't say their vocalic R sounds, but they can say R in the beginning of a word. I'm just giving you an example. So I had a student who was not able to say the sound, but they were able to say the word rain perfectly clear. And so what I did is we kind of worked backwards. So I had them say rain, and then I was like, okay, we're gonna hold that, and we used the R from the beginning to shape the sound, and we worked our way backwards. So I was like, you gotta hold your strong R in the beginning and work backwards. So it was more like rain, and then we kind of just slowly faded the word rain. We got to the point where he was almost just imitating me by, I would say, okay, we're just gonna do the mouth movement, and then we kind of just slowly faded the word rain to get that sound. After you get the sound in isolation, you are going to be pairing it with a variety of other sounds and blends. So you're kind of starting with the easiest and then working your way all the way up to the blends. So you're going through all the different types of, you get all the different phonemes and sounds. So for example, in Sandra's course, the first sound that she recommends pairing with is, and that's because you can keep your tongue in the position. You don't have to move your tongue to make that sound. So it's like it's like a cycling through. You start with these sounds and sound families in nonsense words, and then you go through all of them, and then you cycle back around until you're working on real words. So for example, I said the first target after you've gotten in isolation might be her. And the focus here is on, the focus here is on sustaining that correct lingual positioning and just holding that sound and making sure that the sides of the tongue, if they're doing a bunched R, that the sides of the tongue are lifted and touching where they need to touch. So her. And then, you'd move on next to bilabial sound. So we would do burr. So they have to, just go a little bit more difficult now because the lips are moving, but they still have to focus on keeping the tongue in position. Now, again, if I was working on the bunched R and my student said buh or buh, and they just, I would give them the cues. Hey, you dropped the sides of your tongue. You weren't lifting them, so you didn't spread and lift the tongue. So after you have gone through all of the possible nonsense word combinations, then you're going to do real words next. So before we might have paired with bilabial sounds like burr. Now we will say that in real words. So it's like December. Okay, after that we are going to work on vocalic R, all of the rest of them, right? So you've got, R and or and air and ire and all of those. So you are just going to now take what your student, they have this really, really amazing sound by now, and you're going to use that to shape the other sounds by slowly blending the vowels into the So for example, if we had the word girl, well, that is just plus ol. Or if you have the word car, that is, the R sound is just plus So it's like R. And if your student has a little bit of trouble, then you just have to go back and remind them that they need a strong in there. And of course, to get R in the initial position, you can use that sound as well. You can have them say like red, and then just kind of have them shorten it just a little bit, red. And so once they remember that tongue positioning and the correct positioning that their tongue needs to be in to make that sound, then they will have a really good R in the beginning of a word as well. I truly hope that you found this R video helpful. I know that R can be overwhelming, but it can also be so much fun once you start seeing success with your students when you're correcting R. It's a game changer. This method has been a game changer for me, and I hope it will be for you as well. So I will put the link to my Vocalic R resource that is available in my Teachers Pay Teachers store in the description. If you're interested, you can check that out. And I'll also put the link to the typodont that I use. Once again, if you're interested, you can check it out. There are lots of options out there for different typodonts that you can use to give your students good visuals. And one more thing that I forgot to tell you, I don't think I told you this, but you can pair highlighter tape for showing lingual palatal contact when you have a typodont, and that can be very helpful as well. So thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. If you like this video, please give it a like. Let me know in the comments. You can ask me your R questions. I will do my best to answer them. I don't know every single answer, but if I do, I will certainly do my best to help you out. Please make sure that you subscribe to my channel because I have a lot more speech therapy content headed your way. So I'll talk to you next time. Bye.